My name is Mark Ellington. I'm here on behalf of the Sheep's Back. The Sheep's Back, if you haven't heard of us, is the AWI grower network in WA, and there's a similar one in each state. So there's Sheep Connect in New South Wales and South Australia. Just before I go any further, I'd just like to apologise. Yeah, obviously can't be there today. I've got COVID, so I'm on 7 days of lockdown. I've just sent my wife and kids up to the paddock so I can have half an hour of peace to record this without all the background noise. So yeah, I'm a farm management consultant working for Icon Ag. So we have the contract to manage the sheep's back in WA. Our office is based in Darkin. So what is the sheep's back? Well, as I alluded to, it's the WA Wool Growers Network. It's been running for about 17 years now. It's a slightly different format now. Our mission statement is that the sheep's back will champion the merino industry in WA and improve grower confidence and the capacity to make better and timelier decisions. So currently we have 2,350 members across WA, and you can see there's roughly 1,700 of those are farmers. And this map is just where they're all located across WA, and you can see I accidentally chopped off the Esperance bit with my face, but yeah, see we're not hugely represented in Esperance. Hopefully we can change that in the years coming. So what do the sheep's back do? So we have newsletters, both hard copy and email. So we have our email maggot mails and 2 hard copy newsletters a year. The events we run standalone sheep optimizers. Then we join in with field days like this one when we're invited. And we also run a biannual Sheep Easy event. So we ran that in Williams last year. We had 180 people attend, and Tim Leeming was our keynote speaker. We do SMS services, topical content, reminders of field days, etc. We do seminars on seasonal issues, so this has been a pretty big one in the past. Dry seasons workshops. We also have a website, and we're heavily on social media, which many of you probably follow us on Twitter. So we have an independent advisory panel. So this is 10 farmers or industry across WA, and they pretty much guide us in what they think we should be presenting on, the topical issues in WA. So if you have any feedback on the sheep's back or ideas, and you know one of these 10 people, get in contact with them, or otherwise you can contact myself, Andrew Ritchie, or Renee Sieber. So today, I'm going to present on what top sheep producers do, and the Sheep's Back's also funded David to talk about vaccinations. This is always a very popular topic, and we hope you get something out of it. So top 10 tips on a profitable sheep enterprise. So before I go any further, just a bit of background. So as I said before, I'm a farm management consultant based out of Darkin. We've got some data that I'll present through this presentation. Now I just have to reference Compass Agricultural Alliance, which is our local grower group, where a lot of all this data comes from. And the system is roughly a 50-50 sheep and crop system with over 500,000 sheep. So what are the top 10 tips? Well, number 1, be organised. Timing is important. Now, I'll expand on all these further on, so this is just a quick summary at the start. Pay attention to detail, know your profit drivers, understand the animal nutrition basics, understand pasture production basics, benchmark your operation, design exit strategies for poor seasons and recognise the implications of these strategies. Adopt new handling gear. I've got some videos to show you on that. Choose genetics that match your objective. And lastly, get good advice. So number 1 is being organised. Well, it sounds pretty simple, but But yeah, the sheep system can be planned out in the calendar. So lambing is obviously, well, mating, then lambing is 150 days. Then you can wean 14 weeks later. And I note that ASHEEP had a fair bit to do with the lambing planner, which is a pretty handy tool. So when does 80% of your fly strike occur? I'd say there's no excuses for late crutching, fly strike, worm issues. Most of these things, 80% of the time, they're happening at the same time each year. So can you draw up a calendar of events? Now we have clients that have a calendar, especially handy when there's several members of the business, whether it's your husband, wife, or 2 generations, or employees. That there's a calendar of events, people are aware of what happens and when, so it's not just all in one person's head. Attention to detail. So this is based on some of our benchmarking data. At the top, so I mean, they're only small things, but they all add up to a big result. So top producers, they're running 10% more sheep. This is per winter gross hectare per unit of rainfall. They generate 14% more lambs per ewe hectare, which again is per unit of rainfall. They cut 18% more wool, again per unit of rainfall. They feed 4% less energy per head. They use 19% more fertiliser. Again, this is per hectare per unit of rainfall. But interestingly, they spend 2% less overall, despite running more sheep with a higher output. So understanding your profit drivers. This is a pretty important one. So like a crop system, yield drives profit. So what are the yield drivers of a sheep system? So it's the wool cut per hectare and the number of lambs born per ewe hectare. Things that don't matter so much are wool price, lamb percentage, and I'll show you a bit of data that backs up. So what is not a key profit driver? So in this graph, we've got up the side, we've got the sheep gross margin in dollars a hectare, ranging from $200 to $700. And across the bottom axis, we've got the wool price, which is starts at $9 net wool price, sweep the board through to $12. And again, this is data from Icon and Compass Agricultural Alliance, and it's all 5-year average numbers. So you can see here, the wool price makes zero effect on a sheep gross margin. Now, granted, we've got a slight, or not a slight, we've got quite a big wool micron premium at the moment, which would change that a bit now. But this is 5 years data. What else is not a profit driver? Lamb percentage. So this is the pub talk. This one. So 5-year average lamb percentages from 80% through to 110% across the bottom. And up the side, we've got the sheep gross margin again from $200 to $700 a hectare. And you can see I've got my R-squared value there of 0.03. So hardly any correlation between a lamb percentage and the sheep gross margin for this data set. And remembering it's a 5-year average. What else is not a key profit driver? Wool cut per head, or I've used wool cut per DSE here. So that's across the bottom from 2.5 kilos out to 5 kilos per DSE, and a sheep gross margin up the side. And you can see there is a slight relationship. So 11% of the variation in the sheep gross margin can be explained by the wool cut. So that's this R-squared number. So yeah, it's a slight relation, but I wouldn't be basing my operation on that. What are the key profit drivers of a sheep enterprise? So the first one is lambs per ewe hectare. So we've got this on this graph, which ranges on the bottom axis from 3 lambs per ewe hectare out to 8 lambs per ewe hectare, and up the side again we've got a sheep gross margin. You can see there's a pretty pretty strong correlation between lambs per ewe hectare and a sheep gross margin. So lambs per ewe hectare obviously is a combination of a lamb percentage and or how many ewes are actually on that hectare. Now secondly is wool production. So that's the second thing you export off a hectare of sheep is the wool. So across the bottom we've got 20 kilos per hectare or winter graze hectare through to 70 kilos per winter graze hectare. And then again up the side is a sheep gross margin in dollars per hectare. So you can see again a pretty strong correlation between a sheep gross margin and how much wool is produced per hectare. And obviously with all these graphs there is outliers, but you know with a correlation like that, it's pretty strong. So probably in conclusion to the key profit drivers is the sheep income. So the more income you can generate off a sheep hectare, the higher the sheep gross margin will be. So pretty much you get paid for lambs and you get paid for wool. So how do you get the most per hectare of these two outputs drives what your sheep gross margin is for the year. So number 4 is the animal nutrition basics. Now, it's all about energy. Energy is the main one. We use energy to achieve condition score targets throughout the year for the adult ewes, which drives your like conception rates, lambing rates, which goes into how many lambs you produce, which is what we've just been talking about. That's what you get paid for. And it also maintains or increases the wool cut the better condition the sheep are in. Secondly is protein, now especially important for young growing sheep. They must have protein in their diets. And then lastly there's minerals. Now this is very environmentally specific, whether you need selenium, cobalt, what might be required in your environment. So why is energy important? So this is a graph of energy requirements of a ewe from mating all the way through pregnancy into lactation and then out to pretty much weaning again. So you can see across the bottom is the days. So day 150 of pregnancy is actually lambing, and I've got that above there. And up the side is the energy requirements in megs per head per day. So a yellow line is a twin bearing ewe, and the red line is a single bearing ewe. And you can see pretty much at peak demand, a twin bearing ewe needs 3 times the energy of a dry sheep. So just for interest sake, so right now, as of today, if you're a first of May lammer, you're 120 days into pregnancy. So if you look across the bottom axis to 120 days and go up, so your single bearing ewes need 10.6 megs of energy, whereas your twin bearing ewes need 12.1 megs of energy. Now compare that to if you're a 1st of July lammer, currently at 60 days of pregnancy. So I mean that's really at the right at the start of this graph. And your 55 kilo ewe needs 8.7 megs of energy. Now there'll be a slight change if you have bigger sheep than that, bigger merinos or a Dooney or a Sam type. Your energy requirements are they are higher the bigger a sheep is. So if sheep are kept in better condition for longer, they'll produce more wool. So this is some lifetime ewe data. Now I imagine quite a few of you in the room have probably done a lifetime ewe course, and you might have seen this type of data. So across the bottom we've got the 2 different birth types, twins and singles, and up the side we've got a clean fleece weight in kilos. So you can see the red bars, if a ewe loses half a condition score from early to mid-pregnancy, she'll have a lower wool cut than if she maintains condition score. So I mean, roughly an increase of 0.5 condition score in pregnancy will equate to about 0.4 kilos of clean wool. And it's the vice versa, the same as if they lose half a condition score, over early to mid pregnancy, their wool cut will decrease by 0.4 kilos of clean fleece wool. Now, the fleece wool, so if we use 1400 cents clean, so 0.4 kilos is roughly $5 a head of wool. $5 a head of wool will buy you 15 kilos of lupins, which in an annual feed budget is quite a bit. How do we use energy to determine our condition score targets? So the first condition score target any sheep operation will have is the ewe condition score at joining. You can see this across the bottom of this graph. There's a condition score 1 to 5, and up the side is the proportion of ewes in the flock. So you can see as the condition score increases, we have more, or you will have more twin bearing ewes, less singles and less dries. So you get a higher potential lambing rate the higher the condition score is. The next condition score target you'll have during the year is ewe condition score at lambing. So across the bottom we have condition score 1 to 5, and up the side is lamb survival in percentages from 40 to 100. So an increased condition score at lambing equals an increased lamb survival, and this is pretty much through birth weight. So a higher conditioned ewe will have a higher birth weight lamb. And you can see for a single lamb, they're pretty robust. If you miss a condition score target, because for whatever reason, you don't get a great penalty. However, for the twin ewes, missing a condition score target, say by 0.3 or 0.5, is 10% lambs that are missing. So it's important to meet the targets and know what energy the ewe requires to actually meet that target. If she needs to put on weight, if she's allowed to slip, etc. The next one is number 5. It's pasture production basics. So feed on offer. So food is the supply of feed that's in the paddock. Now we try and match the supply and demand in a sheep system because the feed on offer times the pasture growth rate equals the stocking rate that your sheep system can sustain. So really, I mean, more food is more intake, and more intake equals higher production. So as I showed earlier, more lambs, more wool production is what drives a sheep system. So feed on offer comes in different forms. Is 300 FU in all situations? How much can they actually eat? I mean, here we've got a seeded pasture or seeded sort of cereal crop that's used as pasture to pretty much a legume pasture through to volunteer ryegrass that's germinated off the back of a crop. So, and they're all roughly 300 FU, but clearly sheep are going to get more to eat out of one than the other. What actually affects the pasture intake? So feed on offer, which is a height by density. So how does the height affect the bite size and how much is in that bite size? So remember that picture on the previous slide of the sown crop. The sheep are going to get a lot more bites and bigger bites out of that pasture than they will the subclover pasture example. The other one that affects pasture intake is a growth rate. So an increased growth rate equals a bite size sooner. And how can we artificially increase this pasture growth rate? And the last one is a diet selection. So the more pasture out there, they have a time to select. Sheep graze 6 to 8 hours every day. They can select a much higher quality pasture than what sort of we can sample. So why is density important? So across this some old ag department data, which is pretty much density down the bottom, plants per square metre from 0 to 5,000, and up the side is a food on offer. Pretty much the more dense your pasture is, the more feed's going to be out there. What about the pasture species? So again, this is some ag department data. And so I'll just take a bit to explain it. So from the top, in orange, we've got foo at weight gain. We got the 5 different sort of species down there, from erodium, subclover, silvergrass, capeweed, and Wimmera ryegrass. So for the say, for rhodium, for example, is 625 kilos of food before there's weight gain. Subclover 550, silvergrass 660, then we've got capeweed at 360 kilos, and Wimmera rye 200 kilos. And a big driver of that is actually the bite size. So 200 of Wimmera ryegrass stands up a lot easier to get a mouthful for a sheep than what 550 of clover would be. And then down the bottom, we've got days before weight gain have occurred. So this is pretty much a bite size times growth rate. Again, so in erodium, 100 days before weight gain has occurred, subclover 86, silvergrass 70, capeweed 58, and Wimmera ryegrass 18 days before weight gain has occurred. And I suggest some of these, grazing cereals are probably even better than the Wimmera ryegrass. So we go back to what energy the ewe requires across the year. So we've got 2 different lambing times that I explained before, which of right now, the 1st of May lambing exerts a 20% higher grazing pressure at the same stocking rate than the 1st of July lammer. Which is, it's not that big at this time of year. You've probably got stubbles out there before they've seeded them. But by the 21st of May, you probably nearly finished cropping. Most of your stubbles have disappeared. If we haven't had a great break to the season, there's probably not much green feed left yet or available yet. So there's 100% higher grazing pressure on the 21st of May by that May lambing over the July lambing. So for example, your 1st of May lambing, they're 20 days into lactation. So on that graph there would be 170 days. So a single single bearing ewe needs 20.7 megs of energy. Whereas your 1st of July lammer, she's at 110 days of pregnancy. So if you follow the graph across to 110 days and up, the single bearing ewe will need 10 megs of energy. So really what happens in this system is the earlier lambers just have a lower yield potential. They're not going to produce as many, or be able to run as many ewes per hectare, so they have less lambs per hectare and less full production per hectare. However, it's not all doom and gloom. We know how to grow crops, or you know how to grow crops. That more and more of that technology to grow a crop is being used to grow pastures. So, fertilizers, insect control, pH. Big one is, the cereal plus nitrogen system grows a lot of feed early. So there are, ways to grow more pasture to increase the output. And I would say we see this more and more, and it becomes sort of a critical part of the system once you decide to move to a higher output sheep system. So number 6, benchmark your operation. So again, this is some of that 5-year benchmarking data. Across the bottom, we've got a sheep gross margin in dollars per hectare. And up the side, we've got a sheep gross margin in dollars per DSE. So, you can look at this graph, imagine where you might be. So I've used this person in the bottom sort of left there. Now they've got a $35 DSE margin and say a $280 sheep gross margin. So where should they go? What should they be looking at? So, first port of call would be, increase the output per DSE before they worry about, running more sheep to the hectare or, any of that sort of stuff. So, but I would say it's your property, your resources, and your experience. I'm not here to say I'll go and run 20 DSE because I understand that each farm's different, each skill set, each business. So number 7, design exit strategies. An exit strategy is really there for when we have a poor season or poor start to the season. So how do we reduce the grazing pressure? So we can sell dry ewes, sell ewes with twins inside them, feed more hay, confinement feeding. There's lots of options. Dropping cropping paddocks out. But I think the key point here is you need the ability to implement these. I mean, there's no point, confined feeding if, you're first a May lammer, you can't confine feeding, or, you want to confine feed but you don't have the facilities to confine feed in, for example. And yeah, make a plan. We can design extra strategies, write them down before the season, before a poor season comes along. So when the pressure's on, I mean, you're probably seeding at the same time, trying to make decisions about the sheep, and you've got something to fall back on. So this is a little bit of data. It's getting a little bit outdated now, but I still think it's relevant. So it was a survey done in 2003 by 2013, sorry, by Curtis and Ritchie. So two farm management consultants. One surveyed the high rainfall zone, one surveyed the medium rainfall zone. So it's all about reaction speed to poor seasons. So by what date will you take action? And you can see here that the high rainfall zone, they're making early decisions pretty much all the way through. I mean, so there's even people in the third week of May, 19% of high rainfall sheep producers are making that decision, that something needs to be done. And yeah, by the second week of June, sort of majority of the high rainfall zone farmers surveyed were making decisions about the season, whereas, it's only 2/3 of the medium rainfall zone. And I'd like to think since 2013, this would, decisions are probably made even earlier now. So the next one is, new handling gear, labour use efficiency. What can your business adopt to help? And so we've got a couple of examples here. Hopefully they play. If they do. Now this is just a VE machine, drenching over the VE machine, straight into electro dip. So just put them. I think the electro dip's got Eureka Gold, so not fully condoning it. It's off label, but it shows what is possible. Now this is a ProWay bulk handler. I just got this video off the internet. Hopefully it doesn't talk over the top of me.
A lot of sheep handlers which require two people, one to do the operation and one to keep the sheep flowing. They load against a lot of sheep handlers which require two people.
But you get the idea. The sheep run in there and it lifts them up to your height. Very good for big, strong sheep or one man or one person operation, I should say. What about this one? This is Eureka Gold being applied remotely. Yeah, it costs about $1,500 to build this. So I'll just play it. So you can see old VE machine with the right Eureka Gold nozzle. Each sheep gets the correct amount. And if you want, I can send through. Also, there's a video, a longer video. It's about 1.5 minutes of them. So those sheep have been drenched on a VE machine at the start, and then they go through the Eureka Gold and then go out. So it's a 2-3 hour job in the afternoon to clear a whole day's shearing. But again, with the VE machine, does take a little bit more labour than a ProWay bulk handler, for example. But yeah, I think the key point here is there's nothing special here. It's just someone's had a go at something, and it's all about hands off Eureka Gold. They didn't want to be exposed to that chemical, so it's their sort of $1,500, and they've got a way to do that. Feeding sheep. Now this is a very time-consuming process for most sheep businesses. So this is a feed truck built. It's got scales on it. It was all for under 30 grand. Holds 20 tonne of lupins. Electronic scales there that you can see that work quite well. And this, for this particular business, the truck combined with combined feeding is half their feeding time. The next one is number 9, choose genetics to match your breeding objective. So I've just been all the output related stuff. So 80% of the output is related to management. But you have the opportunity to use ASBVs. So what are ASBVs? There's a genetic worth of an animal compared to its peers, which really just estimates an animal's true breeding value based on pedigree and performance recorded information. So this is widely used in the industry already, and it doesn't actually cost you anything to use ASBVs. You just need to ask your ram breeder if they don't already use ASBVs. Start asking the question. Now the last one is get good advice. So here we've got 3 different systems. We've got an all merino system, so 100% made to merinos, an all merino system keeping wethers to 4.5 years old, and a 70-30 merino crossbred system. So 70% of the ewes made to merinos, 30% made to crossbreds. And you can see here that the gross margins, for the all merinos and the 70-30 merino crossbreds are similar-ish, but as many of you probably don't run wethers anymore, the margin is lower. So I've made assumptions that adult wethers cut 1.5 kilos more than a ewe, because it's all predicated on the wool price, a 4.5-year-old wether system. And you can see down the bottom the gross margin per DSC, $51 for an all merino system, $37 for keeping wethers to 4.5 years old. And this is just purely due to the lack of sheep sales. If you're running lots of dry sheep, you don't get to sell many sheep. And then the 70-30 merino crossbred system, it's chopped it off, but it's actually $54 a DSC. So I suppose the key point here is, these are all pretty good numbers, $51 or $54 a DSC. They are very good numbers historically. Where does your system fit in there? What about a non-wool system, for example? Make sure the system you're running is the most profitable you can be. And lastly, good advice, but turn it into miles. So here we've got, again, that 5-year average data from Compass Agricultural Alliance. The average gross margin per DSC was $50 roughly, whereas the top 25%, $61 a DSC. So there's a 21% difference. And then if we apply that per unit of rainfall, it's actually a 38% difference in gross margin per hectare per unit of rainfall, which is massive. And that's really from those, top 25% run 10% more sheep, cut a bit more wool, have a few more lambs, spend a little bit less on feed, and spend a little bit less on the whole operation despite the higher outputs. So, they're only small things, if you were half an extra lamb, 0.2 kilos of extra wool per head is, 2 kilos per hectare. These are small things, but they're adding up to 21 to 38% difference. So in summary, what are the top 10 things? Let's be organised. Timing is important. I encourage you to, if you're particularly in multiple generational businesses, put a plan down on paper. Pay attention to detail. The small things make a difference when they're all added up together. Know your profit drivers. This is, very well known in a cropping system. It is sort of been a bit slower in the sheep systems. But yeah, it's lambs and wool, and once you know the profit drivers in your system, some people here are probably more driven towards the wool part, others more into the lamb part. What are your major drivers, and how can you then, once you know that, how can you actually change them? Understand the animal nutrition basics. So this is really about meeting those condition score targets across the year for the ewes. Understanding pasture production basics, and as I said, this is critical if you're switching to a sort of more higher output sheep system. This will be driven by how much pasture you can actually. Number 6, benchmark your operation. Know where you sit. It's hard to make improvements or know where to make improvements if you don't know where you currently sit. Design exit strategies for poor seasons and recognise the implications of these strategies. So again, this is one to be put down prior to the season. This is a good time of year to do it before the pressure comes on. Adopt new handling gear. So yeah, a lot of our top producers are, they've got some type of handling gear. It's all about labour use efficiency. Doing more with less. Choose your genetics to match your objective. ASBVs are free to use. In that data set, there'd only be 3 or 4 data points in there that aren't actually using ASBVs now. And lastly, get good advice. Make sure what you're doing is the most profitable thing you can be doing. So thanks for having the sheep back along. I'm sorry that I couldn't actually be there. Disappointed that I couldn't get there, but this is what COVID world is. And if you've got any questions, I'm sure if you let Sarah know, I'm happy to give you a call later in the week, or send an email out via the ASHEEP. Thank you very much.